Final hour OverDrive continues. Brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Best bets brought to you by FanDuel later in the hour. Our buddy Chris Johnston coming up here in a moment. More on the NFL weekend. Shout out to I got a new guy, Matthew Pavon.
Oh, yeah.
Matt Pavon. I love this guy. He closed at Torrey yesterday or on Saturday, and it was phenomenal.
Hayes, we talked about, like, we're going to watch the PGA Tour regardless. It was a tough leaderboard, man. And I love a Matthew Pavon.
Pavon.
But that was a tough leaderboard. Now Tyrrell Hatton's gone. Like, they got some guys that were entertaining to watch. Like, you go from John Rahm, Phil Mickelson, Bubba Watson,
Bryson,
Bryson,
Koepka.
Sergio Garcia, Koepka. Like, they had some guys where you're like, you put that guy on TV, I want to watch that guy hit a golf shot. It's just, it's in a weird place, man. I'm kind of worried. I'm worried about what the hell's next, man.
Well, this is exactly what Liv wanted. You mentioned Tyrrell Hatton. It was announced or reported on today. He's out. He's going. And
they're throwing 50. Like, they threw 50 sheets in that guy's jeans. Like,
yeah,
that's a lot of cake for that guy.
It's a lot of money.
That's the thing. Like, cash is king. That's what Liv is doing. They've disrupted the establishment. That's what they've done.
And it's all for them to get a deal, which is going to happen, and the PGA Tour is going to have to fall on the sword here, and they're both going to coexist, and that's where it's going. Because
yeah, but how is the PGA Tour ever going to go back to the guys and say, okay, we're coexisting, and Max Homa and Tiger Woods and Rory and JT and Spieth are going to put up their hand and say, how are you going to make us whole? Because we stuck by you, and they all got 50 sheets to 125 in their jeans.
Well,
so what the hell are you going to do for me?
I guess the argument would be we didn't beg you to do anything. You guys were out there saying that you want to play here. This is more important to you, your legacy, et cetera, et cetera. And they've pumped a lot of money into elevated events, you know, into the players, into, like, there's a lot more money at stake on the PGA Tour.
That's what's scary. Like, but it's the guarantee of having $50 to $100 million in your pockets. Because if you look at a quality player like a Scotty Scheffler, like, he's going to win $15 to $17 million this year.
Yeah.
And then you put the player impact program on top of it. He's probably shoving another $8 in his pockets just for being a guy that's mentioned on Twitter.
So it's $25 million right there.
He's going to make a fortune. Exactly. And that is plus legacy. This is where they want to be. They don't want to uproot their families or whatever. I don't know. I think what is going to be the issue is not necessarily making them whole as much as those guys are just going to have to accept that
they didn't go.
They didn't go, and the guys that left, they're coming back because of what we just said. You can't have leaderboards. Like, the Farmers is a great tournament.
Dude, and no one showed up to it. It's like,
no one's
why
there.
they didn't? But you know why they didn't show up to it? It's the same reason why they didn't go to Pebble Beach last year. Because Pebble wasn't an elevated event, so everyone was like, screw Pebble. I'm not playing Pebble. And this year, they said, screw it to the Farmers.
Yes.
The Farmers used to be the who's who of the PGA Tour, man.
Exactly.
That was Ernie, Tiger, Phil on Sunday in contention, and all the great players wanted to play there. Now it's Carl Pavon.
Matthew Pavon. And you're right. And now Pebble next week will be stacked. It's the biggest, greatest field they've ever had. Because it's an elevated event. It's elevated. I understand that.
And AT&T probably went to Jimmy Nance and crew and said,
what are we doing here?
PGA Tour. And
as
said,
they should.
We're going to give you that money and you're going to throw that field at us? Not a chance.
Right. And guess what I would assume Farmers is going to do in the future? Don't
even think about it.
Or say, I don't care about Liv. I want those guys in my tournament.
Right.
I want Ron playing. I want DJ there. I want Koepka there. So that's what's going to happen at some point. Rory and JT and Tiger are going to have to bite their lip and realize those guys are coming back because you got to have them. You got to have them.
Notice how Rory's been invisible for a couple months.
He'll be there this week.
Quiet.
He's going to be there this week. All right, here's our TSN Hockey Insider joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Here's Chris Johnston. How you doing, CJ?
Doing well, boys. How are you?
Well, we're doing very well. We were posing a question earlier today. I guess we'll pose this to you.
Yeah, give it to him because we all three had different.
Everyone had a bit of a different view, right? Our Something to Chew On brought to you by Boston Pizza asking, as the Maple Leafs enter the All-Star break, what do you believe will be the biggest storyline in the second half? Matthews chasing 70 goals, the goaltending carousel, trade deadline priorities. Of those three options, what would be your pick?
Ooh. Go with Matthews chasing 70 goals.
I told you.
Give him the scenario, though, Hayes.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm not doing that again. I had a really dark, awful scenario
Negative
earlier.
scenario.
A negative. I'm not going to will that into existence, but explain why you think Matthews chasing 70s at the top.
Well, I mean, it would be the greatest goal-scoring season in Leafs history, one of the best in NHL history, and I just don't think the deadline is going to have as much pop this year, and certainly don't have any indication the Leafs are going to be big players there. And, I don't know, the goaltending, I'm maybe feeling optimistic during the break, but looked to me like Samsonov was stabilizing, and then when Joseph Woll gets back, I could see that being maybe not quite at the top of the list.
CJ, you said something that I'm not exactly enjoying right now. The deadline won't be active. Do you know how many teams need players? Are they putting their hands up saying, I can't do it right now?
I think it's more like, I don't know if you've checked out the trade bait board, but, and I certainly am not trying to discourage anyone from doing so, but there's just not a ton of big names in play. Look, there's still 5.5 weeks or whatever it is. Maybe I'll get surprised, but it just feels like we don't have quite the same number of players as we've had in some years. A lot of the teams that are the clear-cut sellers have already been selling for a couple of years, so they just don't have the kind of talent we're used to. And I also think the wide open field, it's going to be a great thing for the playoffs because it does feel a little bit less, settled this year. But I think it also might impact, what teams do at the deadline and how risky or how all in they want to be.
Well, that could actually benefit teams in the middle of the pack, like where the Leafs are at, right? Like, do we see a super team? Like Boston represented that last year, and we saw what happened. So it may not necessarily matter, but you look throughout the league, like it's been pretty remarkable, CJ, outside of a couple of teams, Bruins included, everyone's had their ups and downs. Mm-hmm. Like now in the East, you look at it, the Rangers are struggling. Carolina's had ups and downs.
Watered down league, Hayes. It's a watered down league.
I mean, what do you make of it, CJ? The idea that it really could be a roll the dice and see what happens come playoff time.
Well, and what I sense, and again, it's a little bit early to say this declaratively, but I just sense a lot of teams' front offices are a little less likely to be throwing around first-round picks and everything, maybe because of some of the struggles they've seen from their team, or some, also just not the kind of players on the market that maybe warrant that. I mean, there's a few exceptions. I think Vancouver is going to be pretty aggressive in terms of adding another forward to their group and, really going for it. They've already kind of caught lightning in a bottle with how many great seasons they're having out of individual players on that team. I think Edmonton will be aggressive, just coming up to the end of the Draisaitl and McDavid contracts are within view. And so I think that there's an understanding that this is a year for them to keep pushing. And obviously with the win streak they've had, that only bolsters things. But I do think that there's a lot of front offices that are kind of capped out. The Leafs are in this spot a little bit where they've gone for it in previous deadlines, so they don't have as much capital. I think, Tampa's in a similar spot. Boston doesn't have a first-round pick this year. Just some of the teams we're used to maybe, being more aggressive at the deadline. I don't think they're going to be able to. And, it sets up, I think, a pretty interesting playoff scenario because, there's I don't know if there'll be upsets if everyone's kind of in the mushy middle.
CJ, do you think that there's one team that could trigger maybe a domino effect? I keep coming back and people keep telling me it's the Calgary Flames. If Craig Conroy ends up accepting whatever's being offered for some of the players that he has as pending unrestricted free agents, could that maybe trigger, a domino effect throughout the league of teams that are in that meddling middle, we'll call it, to try and upgrade?
Yeah, I mean, I think Calgary is kind of an obvious team to look to for that, just because Noodles that they do have some difference makers there, and a couple of them are on unrestricted free agent contracts. I know that there's at least been talk, would Markstrom maybe waive his no move? Would he be moved? I mean, they have the ability, if they decide to go something looking like scorched earth, to shake things up and really move a lot of players. I'm curious what happens in Pittsburgh. That they don't fall into the same category. Obviously, we've been pretty zeroed in on Gensel already, but I do think that if they end up sort of going towards seller mode by March 8th, we could see some interesting players traded out of there. But Calgary's probably number one with a few of those bubble teams. even Seattle has a bunch of pending UFAs. I know they've gotten really close to the Western Conference wildcard race here just before the break. But if they fall out, there's a few sort of swing teams, I guess, that maybe could shake up the marketplace a little bit. And Calgary's kind of been in pole position all year just because of the number of UFAs they've had.
CJ, you mentioned Pitt. What does that look like if they decide to sell off some pieces? I mean, that could happen, but then you're getting to what does Sid think of this? What do you do with Sid? You got some real big questions. You're kind of jammed up there a little bit because that teardown or that rebuild should have started, or let me even say retool should have started 3 to 4 years ago.
Right, and then they re-signed Malkin, they re-signed Letang.
Exactly.
And that kind of takes that off the table entirely. And I think as long as Crosby, Letang, and Malkin are Penguins, management will be of a mind where they're going to try to, put a winning team around them. But, there's also reality that's staring you in the face. And, Jake Gensel is probably one of the better pieces that they can move. If there's a terribly deep group of forwards that I can see being available at this deadline, I think there'd be a lot of interest in him. And, he's coming up on 30 years old here. So, it's not necessarily the kind of piece that if you're in Pittsburgh, you would be thinking about a long-term extension with, just because you do know that rebuild is coming at some point in the not-too-distant future. So, I don't know how it all shakes out. I think that those guys, having been with the organization for so long, I think they'll be realistic to a point about it. But, where it'll be tricky is if they're, right on the line or a point out as you get to March 8th. I mean, they've kind of fallen back here in January, didn't put many wins together. And so I think in some ways it'll be easier if that trend continues and it's just evident that they're not going to make the playoffs. But, if they're kind of right on the line when it gets to that day, I'll be very curious to see how Kyle Dubas approaches that deadline.
With Chris Johnston, our TSN Hockey Insider, the Leafs going to the break on a high. Obviously, Saturday night they get themselves a win. John Tavares scores. Ryan Reeves scores. We haven't even mentioned Reeves yet in that story. But the reason he's in the lineup is Yarncroke broken knuckle. Is that a month and a half? And would you expect that Reeves continues to play now?
Well, for the foreseeable future, I think so. Yeah, I mean, just a numbers game, for the Leafs at this point. I mean, keep in mind Bobby McMahon has what seems like a minor injury, and so he'll be back in the picture, I would think, on the other side of the All-Star break. And so at that point, you're back to having 13 forwards. So maybe it's McMahon and Reeves kind of, jockeying in and out on that fourth line, when we get back from the break. As for Yarncroke, I think that it's probably a 4-week type of injury with the potential of being a little bit longer than that. If there's one positive about it, because it was a friendly fire incident, he took a shot off his hand in practice there on Friday, is that, one of those weeks gets chewed up here with the bye week and the All-Star break. But, Yarncroke is one of those guys we probably don't talk about very much, but he's a pretty useful player for Sheldon Keefe. And, he's sort of one of the few defensive, forwards that the coach trusts in terms of when he's making up lines and things like that. So he'll be missed and, probably back somewhere around the end of February.
So Nylander's gone pointless in 7 of his last 9 games.
How's that going for people? He's it's just bad timing.
The
right?
timing.
The optics of it are awful.
It's awful. CJ, you're around them. You're around. I don't think his disposition is changing. He's doing his thing. But, if you had a candid conversation with Tree Living or Shanahan right now, what do you think they'd say about pointless in 7 of his last 9 after he signs the largest contract in team history?
Yeah, I don't think anyone likes that. I'm with you. It's not a case where, the lazy take would be to say he's mailing it in. I don't sense that at all. I think if anything, you can look at some of those games and maybe the luck that was there for him early in the year when he was going on those long point streaks, it was kind of dried up to some degree. But the break probably arrives at a decent time for Nylander. Obviously he'll be at the All-Star game and get fed a little bit there, but maybe to have a bit of a reset, because let's face it, if there's been one thing that I think has consistently been brought up about him is just, he is known for going in and out of the lineup in terms of, how engaged he seems or how productive he's been. We haven't seen that to this point this season. And last year, I think he took a lot of strides in that area too. So, some of this does look a little familiar. And, I think that, it's pretty apparent when you give him that contract. You just, you need him to be as consistent as possible. And, it hasn't been there. And that's, that'll be a problem if that streak stretches on much longer when the Leafs get back here next week.
I mean, John Tavares gets on the scoreboard. It was a nice goal. You could see the weight lifted off his shoulders. It was weird. I go the other way. Like, we're cheering on a guy to get a point who makes $11 million. Like, it's a weird thought process. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, like, he's a hell of a player. He does a lot of things, the details of the game. But you're looking at it, I don't even know what he has for points. 35 points, I think, in 46 or something.
Tavares, yeah.
Yeah, like he's... is this the decline, or is this, what's the new norm for him? Is it going to be, because I still believe he can get to 80 points, but he's got to get going. Like, that's the biggest thing. Like, he's got to have a second half, which isn't even a second half, more than that. But it's just, I was watching it and everyone was like, oh, there it is for Tavares. I'm like, yeah, that's what you get paid to do, $11 million a year for that. So I don't know.
Between
what
him
do you
and
make
Willie,
of that?
yeah, they're two of the, like, Willie hasn't kicked in
No,
yet.
Willie
right,
makes
at
$7
11.
million right now.
He makes 7, but as of now, CJ Tavares is still, I believe, one of the 10 highest paid players in the league.
Yeah, and I think for him, where it's really hurt is at least power play hasn't been nearly as effective this season. That's where he got a lot of his scoring done personally last year, and I think it's an area where the team can help him out a little bit. But, I'm with you, Noodles. I mean, you do expect that for him. It's what he's done in his career. It's what he earned that contract on. But he is, getting to the back half of year 6 of a 7-year deal.
Right.
Pretty deep into his career. And, I do think that there's certainly some evidence of decline there. It doesn't certainly mean that he's going to be an ineffective player. I don't think it's going to completely disappear on him in the span of 1 year. But, unfortunately, Father Time's undefeated for lots of great athletes. And the challenge for John is to keep finding new ways to be effective. No one's expecting him to turn back to his prime in terms of the goals and points, but the Leafs need him to score. I mean, there's just no way around it. This team has a pretty dynamic scorer in Austin Matthews, but they're not as dangerous in that regard as they have been in some of the years gone by. And they're going to need the Nylanders and Tavares to have, big playoffs especially, but certainly you want to see it in the second half of the season on the other side of the All-Star break. If they're going to have the kind of run that they're hoping to have.
CJ, the best players in the world are coming into the city. How different is this All-Star game in Toronto than a non-traditional market? Like, a non-traditional market, is it just like, oh, the All-Star game's here, you want to go check it out? Like, everyone's in Toronto. Is it like a petting zoo where they've got meet and greet here, cocktail party there? Like, how different do you think the vibe will be?
Oh, very different. I mean, for starters, bringing back in the draft, that adds an extra night of official activities. You got the whole Bieber thing. It sounds like there's, extra parties with maybe a bit more of a celebrity element than you might not have in other places. And, I think it's going to be quite a thing. I mean, even in my years covering the league, we haven't had that many what we'll call more traditional market All-Star games. I think it's been kind of a trend. I mean, obviously Montreal had one 10 or 15 years ago, but a lot of times it's been trending towards the warmer locales, the Nashvilles, the Vegases, Tampa. Last year was in Fort Lauderdale, and so I think it'll be a little different vibe, and certainly a lot more autograph seeking and events, and so that, taking selfies all over the city. But hopefully the guys enjoy that, and I'm actually excited to see the skills competition. I do think that's the one thing where there might really be some juice this year, because it seems like the top guys are into it.
CJ, we'll leave it there. It's going to be a fun week. Enjoy it, buddy. We'll do it again soon.
All right, guys. Enjoy the week.
There's Chris Johnston, our TSN Hockey Insider, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander, in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. Yeah, remember when the NBA All-Star Game was here? The parties, like, guys were so hungover out there on the Sunday when they were playing. Like, it was
enjoying
hysterical.
themselves. I saw a sign today that was sent to OverDrive. Did you see that?
No.
It looked like it was from an establishment, and it said,
Yeah, I did see that.
if you show some credentials and you're an NHL All-Star, it's free free
Right.
lap dances or something like
Yeah,
that.
lots of hospitality. They're in the
hospitality,
hospitality
yeah.
industry.
Yes.
Yeah, well, listen, everyone's going to try to get in on that, right? Like you mentioned, Bieber's going to be in town.
Oh yeah, it'll be star-studded.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, just means downtown will be crazy and be rocking, and
Yeah,
it'll be. I think they'll put on a good event.
that'll be fun.
Yep.
We're going to be down there, Boston Pizza, Thursday night.
Yes.
Down on front. Can't wait. All right, Leafs lineup of the week. We know how this works. Player of the day, we give out tickets at the end of the week. This week we're giving away tickets to see the Leafs play the Blues February 13th. Plus, we're throwing in a $250 Vanilla Visa prepaid card. Vanilla Visa prepaid cards are available for purchase at Petro Canada. Today's player of the day is Tyler Bozak.
Ooh.
Tyler Bozak.
Cup winner.
Cup winner Tyler Bozak.
Yep.
Good one, Bozy. Good one.
Good one.
So, yeah, Tyler Bozak is your player of the day. All right? There you go.
Bozy.
Bozy. Hey, Bozy.
He's a good guy. I liked him.
Bozak, he was a great
Yeah.
guy.
He was
Yeah.
a pretty good player.
He was a good
just
Leaf. Yeah, he was a college free agent.
Yeah.
They got him for free.
He's a good player.
Didn't draft
Solid,
him,
yeah.
like nothing. Just college free agent, signed him, and developed
What was
into
that
a really
line?
good player.
Was it JVR, Bozy, and Phil?
Bozak.
And Phil.
Yeah.
Yep. That was it. That was their top line. That line was rocking there for a while.
They were
Then
good.
they kind of finished on a poor note.
Yeah, it didn't go so well.
Yeah.
When
Good one,
Horacek-
Randy. Good one.
I haven't heard that clip in a while.
Some of that. Do you think? Okay, here's a weird question.
Mm-hmm.
Will Phil Kessel get back in the league this year?
I don't think so anymore.
No.
I was asked that a week ago.
I think he would have
That's a
been here
hard
by
no
now, don't you
now.
think?
I think so too. But somebody said by the deadline, does he sneak on with somebody?
Hey, I'm not going to count it out because somebody might say, you know what, if we could just had a guy that can score one goal late in the third period, maybe it's Phil. But you'd have to fly him in and take a look.
Yeah. You got to know what he's been up to
That's
recently.
not a Zoom call.
I think Phil would be like, let's just zoom that.
Yeah. No, you gotta see- you
Really
gotta put
tight,
eyes-
really
Yeah.
tight picture, really tight
You
cam.
got to put eyes on that to see what he's looking
How's your breath? We could do a full show
on Phil.
on Phil.
In his clips.
His clips are the greatest clips that I think we've
That's not
ever
good,
had.
eh?
Yeah. How's your breath? It's not good. No.
What an awkward way to phrase that question, though. How's your breath? Like, what did you expect?
Not good.
I
to say?
don't know. The whole exchange
It's
was
so
bizarre
weird.
world.
He's such an idiot here.
No, but the laugh after, once McGuire clarifies, going like,
Yeah.
"Are you out of breath?" He's like, "Oh, I thought you were."
And he was like, this guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Phil, we got to play some Phil. As the week goes on, carte blanche back there, JP. Just drop some Phil.
Buy tickets, you must.
I never heard that.
We got a whole. I remember that was a Star Wars thing when he was in Pitt.
I don't know.
They were doing a Star
Was
Wars
it
campaign.
Friday, we went down to Freddie Goat.
Frederick Gauthier. Yeah, we got to update the goal.
Oh, did he
have a
score
goal
over
this
the
weekend?
We forgot to
Dude,
find
look
out.
it up. All right, we're coming back. I say he scored? I think Frederick Gauthier's got 10
No,
goals in the
you
Swiss
know
League.
that there's no
$5,000
way you
too.
would say he scored.
All right, I have not looked. I have no idea. Why would you think I was wasting time on the weekend tracking?
Why the
Frederick
hell do
Gauthier?
you think Freddie the Goat would come down the Swiss Alps into the rink and get a goal?
I said Friday he was at 9 goals. I said I'll bet you we get on the air on Monday and he's at 10.
Let's
All right?
get back.
We're
Take a
coming back
break
with
and we'll
that.
see.
Okay.
We're coming back with that. Dan Graziano of ESPN coming up as well. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.
And now, let's go back to Bryan Hayes with the live goat tracker.
I can't believe that was a real thing.
It was awesome.
Like, how was that a real thing? We asked
did it a
Rod
lot, too.
A lot.
Keep in mind,
But we did it as like it wasn't just Freddie the Goat. We did it as like an overview of what the prospects were.
yes,
up
we
to.
keep in mind, like this was a team that was in a rebuild, like going through some tough times, all of that, and we were aboard. We were on board with this group.
Yeah, you're right.
We had fun. Like the goat came on, I think, our show a few times.
We did. We were tracking the goat
And-
with Frederick Gauthier.
And the guys loved it. Like I think we had Connor Brown on and Bozy and all those
Yeah.
guys. They loved it. They loved us talking about the goat.
We had a scenario. I remembered this vividly because, yeah, they were in a bad place.
Right.
This was before Matthews and Marner
It was
showed up.
Process.
And we were kind of just tracking prospects on the team. And we had someone call in. It might have been Connor Brown. It was somebody that was on the Marlies bus driving to like Wilkes-Barre,
Yes.
saying we're watching you guys on the bus.
Yes.
Can you
Talk
give a shout
about
out
Freddie the
to
Goat.
Freddie the Goat? We're like, all right, we'll happily do that.
That might have been Jerry Sparks.
It could have been. It was something
Yeah.
like that. I don't remember exactly who it was.
So funny.
Anyway, let's hear the info of how Freddie the Goat lit up the Swiss Alps League.
The Swiss League.
Yeah.
He went -3 over the weekend and no points. No goals, no points, -3.
I didn't say a weekend 6 years ago in Toronto. I
Yeah.
said this past weekend.
And I'm telling you, this past weekend, he went -3, 0 points. So, take that for what
Not
it's
the
worth.
best.
All right? Not the
Hey,
best.
Louis.
What kind of mins is he playing, Doogie? Did you look at that? Like, is he logging a lot of ice time?
He's preoccupied right now. Doogie will get to the bottom of that by the end of the hour.
Yeah.
Minutes per game.
I think minutes per game is probably 14.
Dude, no way.
It's the Swiss League.
Dude,
thinking
I
more
don't care
16 to
what
18?
league it is. He's not playing over 9 minutes
Yes,
a night.
he is. He played in the National Hockey League like 2 years ago.
I think this is.
Yeah, do you know how much he played in that league? 30 seconds a night.
Yeah. Again, the National Hockey League. Like, this is the Swiss
Yeah.
league we're talking about. Come on. I'll bet you the GOAT is top 10 in the league in minutes per game.
No,
For a
that's-
forward. For a forward. Yes.
I know.
Dude,
Yes.
I'm
are
saying
you
no.
doing drugs?
I'm
Top
saying no.
5 in the league in
Yes.
minutes played?
I'm
forwards.
telling you. For forwards,
No
not for
way,
defensemen,
man.
for
No,
forwards.
No, I would disagree on that.
All
That's
right,
a slap in the face to the Swiss Alps League. Honestly, it is.
Nobody cares what
Is
people in Switzerland think.
Is it the Swiss League? Is it Division 1 or 2?
I don't know
Come
where
on,
he. I
don't
don't
be
even know
silly.
where he
Remember,
plays.
Don't be silly.
Struddy went to Sweden.
Yeah. Was he in the second league?
I don't know if it was the first.
If Struddy was not playing at the top level,
I'm
that's
pretty sure
outrageous.
it was, but I
That's
don't remember.
outrageous. Okay. Well,
get
Struddy was
into
in
it.
D2?
No, I think he was in D1, but I'm saying that Sweden, Swiss, all of these leagues, like there's different levels.
yeah, no,
there,
I
right?
understand
So,
that, but I find that hard to believe.
I don't
And
know.
the same thing with Freddie the GOAT. The GOAT's playing at the top level in Switzerland.
Maybe.
Dude, give your head a shake.
All
This
right.
is ridiculous.
Look up those stats, all right? Doogie,
Yes.
minutes per
I
game.
want a full breakdown.
I do too. All right, the Super Bowl has been established. What an afternoon we had yesterday. It's bittersweet because it's such a fun day, but then you also
Yeah.
realize you only got one game left. But we're off to Vegas, and it's Kansas City versus the Niners to look back on, and we're joined now by Dan Graziano of ESPN. How you doing, Dad?
I'm good, guys. How are you doing?
We're doing very well. What do you make of Niners Chiefs? Like, does that add up to you? Do you feel good about that matchup for the Super Bowl?
Sure, yeah. I mean, look, the Niners have kind of been the best team in the NFC, all year, and the Chiefs are the Chiefs. Like, I don't even know what to say anymore. Like the Ravens were the best team in the AFC all year, and they scored 7 points yesterday. So I'm through with picking against Kansas City for as long as Mahomes is there for the rest of his career. And I think it's one of these things where you get to a situation where you have a team that's in this game, meaning the AFC Championship game, literally every year, right? Like, and now, like, they know how to win it. And so now back in the Super Bowl, they're going to find the same thing, right? They know how to win it. So I think we're just living in an era right now that is the Chiefs era, and much like it was the Patriots era in the last decade plus before this started. I think that we just have to accept the Chiefs as kind of an inevitability, right? I mean, they're not going to get to the Super Bowl every year, but it's never going to surprise you if they do.
Dan, before we get too deep into that matchup, I just want to hit rewind and Detroit. And Dan Campbell's comments after the game, he came out and said he didn't regret anything that happened on the field. Do you think waking up this morning or getting back to Detroit, he would move off of that thought process, or do you think he's still committed to just that's how I do things and we live and die by it?
Yeah, I think if you're Dan Campbell this morning, and anyone associated with the Lions, you are, and for a long time actually, you're going to go over in your head, well, what could we have done differently, right? And so obviously you're going to think about that. Well, what if we'd done that? I mean, the first one, 4th and 2. They got the guy open. He dropped the ball, right? Like they had it. So if he catches the ball, then that decision makes a lot of sense. So I think if you're Dan Campbell, it's a little more nuanced than that, because I think there's a perception out there that he's just sort of this aggressive, like, we're always going to go for it, bite the kneecaps, et cetera, when in fact he's actually pretty calculated with his third and fourth down decisions, and he marries them together, right? I think a lot of their play calls on third down have to do with the idea of where we are on the field and would we go for it on fourth down if we're not successful. There are reams of data and analytics that every coach in the league has access to. There's people there whose job it is to relay this information to him during the game. Dan Campbell's no exception. So those decisions were considered and reasoned and reached the same way he reached them all year, and it just didn't work out. So I do believe he's probably kicking himself over a number of things today, as anyone would in that situation, giving up a 17-point lead in a game that could have got you into the Super Bowl. I mean, there's just no way that can happen to you as a coach, as a player, and you're not going over it in your head for probably years to come in terms of, if we had just done this, if we had just done this. So is that regret? I don't know. But if it is, then I would say yes.
With Dan Graziano of ESPN. So, everyone today, a lot of people today discussing what Mahomes achieved, where he stands in his career, the GOAT debates, are flying, him and Brady. But I'm curious where you stand, because there's so much connection between the Chiefs and the Pats, where you stand on Kelce versus Gronk and Andy Reid versus Bill Belichick. Like, why are we not talking about those discussions a little bit more today as well?
I would say if Andy Reid had won one or two in Philly, then there'd be a real conversation to be had about who was the greatest coach of all time, or certainly of this era. Would it be Reid or Belichick, right? Of course, if he had won one or two in Philly, he might never have been in Kansas City. Mm-hmm. Anyway, but I think to that point, yes, I think he's especially if he wins 2 weeks from now, right? He's a Mount Rushmore NFL coach, and you can make the case that, that he's done better, that you can make the case for him over Belichick. Where the case falls apart is, Belichick won 6 Super Bowls, and he's got to win 4 more to catch him. So if we measure the head coaches and the quarterbacks on those numbers, then these guys still have work to do to catch Brady and Belichick. Mahomes is a different guy to watch. Brady was just sort of exceptional and elite at sort of just winning the game, right? But Mahomes does things that you never saw Brady do, athletically, et cetera. So I think it's tempting to go, we've never seen anybody play like this. And he's winning at a high level. He's obviously a high-level competitor. But I do think he needs, and he would probably admit this, that he needs time before we can have those conversations. And what makes Brady the greatest of all time is his ability to do it over a period of 20 years, whereas Mahomes has been at it for 6.
You think if Andy Reid picks off another one here, he says, check, please, and that's probably enough? Or do you just think he enjoys going to battle with Patrick Mahomes too much and he'll keep doing it?
So that's a really interesting question, and it's been a topic that I've tried to address with various sources over the last couple of weeks, because it's kind of floating out there, right? Like in sort of the NFL ether, that maybe Andy Reid might decide to walk away, especially if he wins one more. I think he's 65, he's got grandkids now, all this kind of stuff. So I would say, based on everything I've been told about that situation, I would put the chances of him walking away at less than 50%, but I think it's greater than 0. I do think it's something that he'll consider every year at this stage of his career. And, you could see a situation where he wins back-to-back Super Bowls for the first time since, Belichick did it 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And he says, well, that's 3 and all this other stuff that's happening. I'm what? He's like top 5 in all time in wins. I could imagine it. I don't know what's in his mind, but based on the conversation I've had with people around that situation, I don't think it's impossible to imagine.
With Dan Graziano of ESPN, we've been talking a lot about Mahomes today, again, in connection to Brady and his career. And I had referenced that when Brady, was doing what he was doing for so many years, there were other quarterbacks that kept getting to the dance. Big Ben won multiple Super Bowls, got to 3. Peyton won multiple Super Bowls, got to 3. Breeze won a Super Bowl. Rodgers won a Super Bowl. Russ won a Super Bowl. Eli won multiple Super Bowls. Who do we believe can catch up with him, or at least be in that, not necessarily catch up, but like how imperative.
Challenge him, man.
Exactly. Like Lamar, Josh Allen, Herbert, Lawrence, Burrow. Like these guys, none of them have done it yet. And I'm curious if you think we're going to see a scenario where in 12 or 13 years, like 3 or 4 of them have won Super Bowls.
Yeah, I mean, Burrow did knock him
He got
out.
one.
So he
got
he
there
didn't
but
win the
lost.
Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Right. So he's probably the guy you have to pick first on that list if you're looking at the AFC quarterbacks, because we've seen them go toe-to-toe, and obviously the Chiefs got him last year, but that game could have gone either way, just like the one the year before. So we know Burrow can stand there toe-to-toe with Mahomes and come out on top. We've seen it. So I would say him. I mean, Allen certainly can do it. We just it just doesn't. I think the Bills are in for a little bit of an adjustment period in terms of the rest of their roster. I think there's some age setting in there, and they're going to have to turn it over. But they have good people in charge. I think they'll do it, and they'll build around Allen and probably stay competitive. Lamar. Geez, what a disappointment yesterday. I mean, that was. I think. Yeah, I'm right. I mean, that was just the whole team. The penalties and. Yeah, so that was a bad day to have your worst game, and the Ravens certainly did. So, I think you guys are right. Like, until it happens, we're guessing. And I think Burrow has certainly shown the ability to do it, and he's probably the answer to your question in terms of who the top challenger is in the AFC, assuming, of course, he comes back all the way healthy. But, Mahomes is just swatting these guys aside. He beat Allen and Lamar a back-to-back weekend.
Yeah. It's wild, man. And, I mean, Tua's a young guy,
on the
too.
Road.
Yeah, and on the road. That's the crazy thing. He goes into Buffalo, goes into Baltimore. And, like yesterday, if you're John Harbaugh, if you're the Ravens,
dude,
like how do you respond to the way that Lamar Jackson played yesterday?
That's a long way back for him, Hayes, because if he gets back again and does it again, guess what he's known as? A guy that just can't get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Right.
And there was a time when John Elway was the guy that couldn't get it done. There was a time when Peyton Manning was the guy that couldn't get it done. Until you do it, they can say you can't. So that's the shame of what happened with Lamar and the Ravens yesterday, because now, you got to go all the way back and do it all over again. But look, I just spent a couple days around the 49ers, and they're a team that lost the NFC Championship game last year in heartbreaking fashion with their quarterbacks getting hurt, and they felt like something was taken away from them. But then they find themselves right back in it a year later. It's not, you can't snap your fingers and get there, but the Ravens can take some encouragement, I think, from that, from the fact that it can be done, right? Like you stick to your plan, you make an adjustment here and there, and you could be in a position next year to make up for the disappointment of this year. So they'll still be good. They still have great people in their front office and great coaches on their coaching staff, and they're one of the top organizations, and they'll always be competitive. But, yes, quarterback greatness, fair or unfair, is judged on postseason success. And the fact of the matter is Lamar Jackson hasn't had it.
Dan, where are you at with all the Taylor Swift noise? You're going to get 2.5 weeks of it coming up.
Yeah.
And you think it's good for the league? You think it's good for, Gate, all of that? Where are you at?
Good for the league. I mean, my goodness, it's an absolute monster for the league. I mean, like bringing in the NFL and any sports league really is always looking for ways to expand audience, and Taylor Swift has done it. Like there are people watching these games that wouldn't be watching these games. The league is good doing cartwheels over the whole Taylor Swift thing. So I think, the NFL's leaned into it, and obviously the broadcasts have leaned into it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't know why people are so upset. I do think there is some Chiefs fatigue, right? Like there was once upon a time Patriots fatigue, and once upon a time Yankees fatigue. And, like when teams win and win and win and win, it gets old in some people's minds. And, there starts to be some resentment that builds up. And I think the reaction to her, to some extent, has been caught up in that. But, yeah, I don't get it. I don't get what anybody's all upset about. I mean, to me, it's a fun sort of cultural intersection. And from the NFL standpoint, I think it's nothing but dollar signs.
Yeah, that's a sensible take there, Dan. We're not allowed to have those, because it is wild when you see people, they're like, get her off. Like, you're watching anyway, dude.
My
With or without
11-year-old
Swift.
daughter is watching.
Yeah.
Loves it.
And if it's not her, they'd show
Exactly.
Kelce's parents or someone
Yeah.
else. That's what they do. They go to the owner. How many times do we see Jerry Jones during a Cowboy game?
That's true.
15 times.
Dude, what about the value to the Chiefs? I read a tweet today, and I don't know the
Yeah.
the truth. It's like a $330 million value to the Chiefs alone.
Right.
That's
In the NFL.
insane. And I don't know if that was factual. Just somebody pumped
No, I
it
saw
out,
that
and I'm
too. Like print,
yeah.
digital, radio, TV, social media, $331 million for the NFL and the Chiefs.
In a revenue sharing league, yes. So I don't think anybody in the NFL has got any problems with it. It does seem to be a lot of negative fan reaction, but a lot of that's on social media, which, as we know, is like the societal cancer of our times. So we could ignore it, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem like that happens.
No, we won't.
I don't know. I think it's fun. It was fun. I guess she's got a concert in Tokyo the night before the Super Bowl. So
Yeah.
we're doing like the math on the travel, see if she could make it. And then American Airlines. Did you see this one?
No.
Yes.
They right after the Chiefs game went final, they created a new flight, a direct flight from Kansas City to Vegas, and the outbound is 1989, and the return is 87. So I think if you want to, you can have some fun with it, and it seems like plenty of people are. And by the way, I mean, I don't know, they seem to really be enjoying each other. Like I don't know, like I don't think it's like people want to say it was staged or whatever. They do seem to. They seem to really like each other.
Oh, yeah. Everyone's in on that idea that it's fixed, right? That everything's rigged, including...
People are too cranky.
It is wild,
get outside more.
It is. I'm with you. Thank you, Dan. Enjoy the next couple of weeks. We'll do it again down the road.
Will do. Thanks, guys.
Dan Graziano of ESPN. Super Bowl in Vegas, I read this morning that I guess they're having the team stay like 30 minutes off the strip. They don't want
you do that.
We're in like Henderson. I mean,
somewhere like Lake Las Vegas or something like that. I don't know. And I guess the idea is they don't want them walking around the strip. They don't want them in the casinos.
Yeah, I mean it's.
And I could also see the teams, like the GM, saying we don't want you there either. Like
I
we
wouldn't want
to
it
be
either.
focused.
It's like just, but at the same time, I don't want to be stuck in some hotel that's by a lake and all I get to do is look out my window because I go stir crazy and I wouldn't feel good about that.
Well, they might get a night where they get to like. Didn't Belichick bench somebody who went out? Like, wasn't there a curfew violation of
Benched
Malcolm
the whole
Butler,
game.
the guy who
Whole
made
game.
he intercepted the ball against Luke.
Yeah,
Pretty sure it was Malcolm Butler, was it not?
that was the guy. Like, didn't he get?
Yeah, the guy picks the most famous interception of all time and then gets benched by
the
Belichick.
whole game.
Yeah,
Which is tough.
that was
because
tough.
You gotta.
I think the Green Bay Packers, when they had their Super Bowl before it was Brett Favre era, they went down to New Orleans and I think they drank beer for 9 days straight before the Super Bowl and they won.
I was in New Orleans. My dad was at that game.
Really?
I remember being I was young, but I can't even imagine what he got up to down there. He was
Really?
He was down there, man. He was down there in New
He was
Orleans.
doing some stuff.
Never know.
I don't even want to think about what he was doing in New Orleans. PSN 1050 wants you to be our unofficial correspondent at the grittiest sports party of the year. Call us right now at 416-870-1050. 416-870-1050. The first caller through with the correct keyword announced this morning on First Up wins a $100 Golftown gift card and qualifies for the grand prize draw. Grand prize includes a trip for two to Scottsdale, Arizona, 4-night hotel stay, 2 tickets to the closing weekend of the Waste Management Open, an additional $1,000 Golftown gift card, a custom full bag fitting at Golftown Studio X, and $500 cash to spend on the trip. Full details available at tsn1050.ca. Come back with our best bets brought to you by FanDuel. The Sens are playing tonight.
Yeah.
Look ahead to that game. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, so we were doing the Go Tracker earlier. And
About his minutes played.
yeah, minutes played. And I'm a believer that Frederick Gauthier, who's playing in the Swiss League,
Right.
I think he's top 10 minutes per game for forwards in that league.
Okay.
That is my belief. Okay, I don't know, JP, if you have access to that direct information?
I just have his number, unfortunately.
Okay,
That's all I could find.
Is this from the weekend, like this past weekend?
Oh no, this is his time on ice for the season with this team.
Okay.
Joel H.
Okay, hit us. What do you have?
21 minutes and 7 seconds.
Dude, that's McDavid.
He's playing, it looks like top line minutes with Daniel Odette, who's their top scorer.
That's top 10 in the league. That's Connor McDavid type
How many
numbers.
points does he have, JP? He plays 21 minutes a night. What's his total points?
In 34 games, he's got 16 points.
200-foot guy.
Yeah, he's a 200-foot guy, and I mean,
He's 6'4" every night.
He sure is.
6'5", I think. Either way.
JP, by the way, do you have the viz of Dan Campbell saying the right stuff, or do we just
We don't
forget
need
about-
that right now. It doesn't,
Oh, we don't need it anymore.
but we'll
No.
get to
Yeah,
that later in the week.
Maybe tomorrow we'll bring it up.
Maybe tomorrow. Yeah, we'll play it tomorrow. Okay, there you go. Freddie Gauthier, 21 minutes. That's pretty.
And I need to clarify too. Strutty was in Division 1 in
I hope so.
Sweden. It says Sweden won, so that's one.
Was that during the lockout?
Yeah, no, it was at the end of his career.
Oh,
wasn't it? Yeah.
So at the end of the career, you never. I mean, they don't
His
have the
feet
money.
would have scared me on that big ice.
Let's have him on this week.
I think we're gonna have him on
Silver
maybe
medal.
tomorrow. I think Strutty's coming on
Oh,
tomorrow.
is he coming? Okay, there we
We'll
go.
get you the whole update on Division 1 in Sweden.
Yeah.
All right, today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Sends money line tonight. Sends money line tonight against Nashville. Roman Yossi, 3+ shots on goal. And yes, a goal is scored in the first 10 minutes. That parlay paying plus 330 tonight. Today's best bets powered by FanDuel. FanDuel's goal in the first 10 minutes is the most electric bet in hockey and can be included in a same-game parlay on any NHL game. Please play responsibly. 18+ and physically located in Ontario. Good stuff to everyone behind the scenes today. Everyone for tuning in. We appreciate it. Radio, TV, podcast, web. It's been a good one. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at
Freddie the Goat, keep cooking with gas. 4 p.m.
We'll chat then.